Good afternoon, everyone. Today we shall be discussing on the last part, Act 3 of Harold Pinter's The Birthday Party. Now, the Act 3 is that climax, is that particular section of the play that reaches to the pinnacle of human absurdity, that reaches to that very state of meaninglessness, where it questions about meaningful existence and an absurdist definition of human existence. Act 3 encompasses all the conditions which were actually in the process of making in Act 1 and Act 2. Act 3 begins as usual as we found in the Act 1 of The Birthday Party. The section begins with Meg and Pete. They are as usual busy in their morning conversation. The husband and wife very casually having their daily interaction. We find Pete busy with newspaper and Meg busy with household works. Pete enters. I am reading a little portion from the text. Left with a newspaper and sits at the table, he begins to read. Meg's voice comes through the kitchen hatch. Meg, is that you, Stan? Pause. Stanny? Peter replies, this time, quite soon, not exactly the way he took long time to respond in Act 1. Now, this Pete is very much aware of the mental, the psychological condition of his wife, Meg. He is very sincere the way he is in conversation with Meg. It seems to us that he is very sincere about the mental hygiene of Meg always. Now, Meg and Pete continues. Is that you? It's me. Oh, it's you. I have run out of cornflakes. So Meg all the time tries to be perfect in spite of so many imperfections in her. This continuous effort to be that ideal one. We find in Meg that she is always struggling not to be someone, not to be identified as an individual having some lack. Rather, Meg is continuously putting efforts to be the perfect one. Look, cornflakes has run out. Well, what else have you got? Nothing. Just a minute. She leaves the hatch and enters by the kitchen door. You got your paper? Yes. Is it good? Not bad. We find a kind of a parallel description of Act 1. But the more we move forward, we find it is more grim, more serious, more pathetic. And to some extent, we must have to say, it comes to an end tragically. Now, the two gentlemen had the last of the fry this morning. Who did they? There's some tea in the pot though. She pours tea for him. I am going out shopping in a minute. So once again, Meg's mentality is very clear that she would like to be perfect always. She is preparing to go for shopping and to get something nice. I have got a splitting headache. So she has been suffering from a headache from last night because of the party. And still the hangover of the party is on. And she is having a kind of a bad headache since then. But Pete, in response, is giving the information to all of us that you slept like a log last night. Did I? Dead out. I must have been tired. She looks about the room and sees the broken drum. That drum, the gift for Stanley. it's broken. We know in the last act it was broken, and this broken drum is actually a very symbolic, object here in this text, and in particularly in Act 3. Probably the broken drum will categorically be presented as a symbol of that Stanley who is no longer valid, that Stanley who is no longer in a position to communicate. And we shall be waiting long enough to have Stanley down from the upstairs. And we must know that Meg will be waiting for him so long. Meg and Stanley are the two characters in the birthday party who are mutually dependent on each other. And as a man like Pinter, there is no confusion at all that he knows it well that her wife Meg needs a kind of a mental and a psychological support, and that can only be available through Stanley. And Stanley is not, of course, mentally and psychologically sound. So these mutually dependent two characters, Stanley and Meg, they are the best of our characters, we must say, who are dependent. Now, since morning in Act 3, we find Meg not even going to the shopping, is continuously waiting that at any moment Stanley might come down from upstairs, and then he will be seeking for breakfast. So Meg was always there. But at the same time, that's kind of that broken drum is symbolic. It symbolizes that Stanley who has lost his sanity, that Stanley who is no longer valid. In Act 3, the Stanley we shall be meeting later, that Stanley can hardly communicate, that Stanley has no power, no authority over his own persona at all, that Stanley just can make some groaning sound, not even utter a full sentence at all. All this stamina, the confidence, all the liveliness that was in him are gone. Another important thing that we have to mention in this particular act is the big car outside the boarding house. The car actually is a sinister symbol. Now, Pinter and Meg, they are conversing each other. When are you going to do for shopping, Meg? Yeah, I must. And Meg is collecting the bag, got a rotten headache. So, it's headache that she is suffering from. And then Meg saw for the first time a big car. A big car? Yes. So the big car is a sinister one, because that is the big car in which Stanley will be taken away forcefully. And when just before the moment of departure, McCann and Goldberg, when they will almost manipulate everything and they will hypnotize probably and will force Stanley to go over there, and that is the particular black car, big car, through which they will be off. And when in the last moment Pinter will come up, the man who almost remained silent throughout the play will speak up then, and will be asking Stanley to stay there, and will be requesting to McCann and Goldberg not to take Stanley away with them. But we know that they would never let Stanley stay there, and they will take Stanley with them. And Pinter has no power in that sense, but Pinter is a conscience. Pinter itself is a conscience, and one thing that I consider is very important to share at this very stage is we know that Pinter is a character who spends time playing chess. Now, chess is a very strategic game. So, being a man who spends time playing chess, now it may look like that Pinter doesn't talk much, but Pinter knows the strategies of the world. Pinter knows what is happening around. Pinter knows something is wrong going on everywhere. But he is a protective conscience who is very careful about his own wife. And another character, I must say, who is also very cautious, but she has her own insecurities, and she is no other than Lulu. Now, Lulu comes in Act 3 also. And when Lulu comes in Act 3, she directly accuses Goldberg for taking advantage of her during the last birthday party that happened. And the kind of sexual, abuse that was done, and Lulu is very much offended for that kind of behavior that Goldberg actually did. And one thing that has to be pointed out is that this Lulu, of course, could sense that something wrong is there, because the suitcase that they carried with them, Lulu, out of curiosity, opened the lid of the suitcase, and she could know that these are the people who are not actually as they look like. There is something wrong. They are actually plotting something serious. So Lulu and Pinter, I must say, are two of the conscience. Now Pinter is that a man who knows the strategies, the sinister aspects of life, and Lulu is getting experience, because apparently Lulu was probably very innocent, but when she came in close to Goldberg and McCann, then the idea, the reality of life, it became more and more clear to her. So naturally, from that very angle, we know that Lulu has, of course, like Pinter, have a conscience. She could also feel that what's wrong happening over there. Now, quite middle of this Act 3, we find that when Pinter and Goldberg meet each other, then it was Pinter who was asking Goldberg, Stanley, is he any better? Somehow, Pinter has also a very soft corner for Stanley. Now Goldberg is saying, oh, a little better, I think a little better. Of course, I am not really qualified to say, Mr. Bowles. I mean, I haven't got that qualification. The best thing would be if someone with proper qualifications was to have a look at him. Someone with a few letters after his name, it makes all the difference. Yes. So this very roundabout way of interpretation that Stanley needs a doctor, and then very soon Goldberg makes it clear that there is a serious nervous breakdown that Stanley is suffering from. Goldberg replies, the birthday celebration was too much for him. What came over him? Goldberg sharply replies, what came over him? Breakdown, Mr. Bowles, pure and simple nervous breakdown, but that brought it so suddenly. Goldberg, well, Mr. Bowles, it can happen in all sorts of ways. A friend of mine was telling me about it only the other day. We'd both been concerned with another case, not entirely similar, of course, but quite alike. Quite alike. Anyway, he was telling me, you see, this friend of mine, that sometimes it happens gradual, day by day. It grows and grows and grows day by day. I stop here. This nervous breakdown, it is as simply interpreted by Goldberg, was not exactly the kind of thing. Rather, it was heightened. It was monitored. So Goldberg and McCann played the role of that catalyst to make that nervous breakdown to reach up to that very level. Another very two characters who are to be mentioned here also, Goldberg and McCann. Their relationship also is not as good as it was seen in Act 1, Act 2. In Act 3, we find that there is a kind of a internal turmoil, misunderstanding taking place between these two characters. So Act 3 is that very climactic text. A text portion talks a lot about human suffering and meaninglessness if it is in one end. On the other end, the most important thing is that uncertainty. What is waiting for us? No one knows. What will cause a nervous breakdown in our case? That we know not at all. Harold Pinter has done the job of making this very whole setup that human life can experience up to that very level too. He has presented this brilliant human conditions in such a unbelievable way. So that's all I had to say about Act 3 of Harold Pinter's The Birthday Party. Thank you so much.